The floorboards groaned beneath Sophie Bennett's small feet as she walked through the dark, empty rooms of the house in suburban Nashville. Every footstep echoed against bare walls where family photos once hung. The air smelled of dust and abandonment. Her stomach twisted with hunger, a feeling that had become constant over the past 3 days since Rachel, her stepmother, had brought her here and never returned. Sophie pressed her face against the cold window glass, watching the street outside. No cars. No people. Just autumn leaves skittering across the cracked driveway. She had counted 47 cars passing by since yesterday morning. None of them stopped. None of them knew an 8-year-old girl was trapped inside, alone and terrified. The house stood on Brookside Avenue, a forgotten street where old homes waited for demolition or renovation. Most of the neighboring houses were already empty, their windows boarded up, their yards overgrown with weeds. Rachel had told her they were going to their new home, a place where they would start fresh after Daddy died. But when they arrived, Rachel's smile had turned cold. "Stay here," Rachel had said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I need to get some things from the store." That was 3 days ago. Sophie had searched every room, every closet, every cabinet. The house was completely empty. No furniture. No food. No blankets. Just dust and silence and the awful realization that Rachel was not coming back. The water still ran from the bathroom tap, and Sophie had drunk from it until her belly ached. But water could not fill the hollow space where food should be. She thought about her father constantly. Michael Bennett had been a kind man, a music teacher who sang to her every night before bed. He had promised he would always protect her. But then the car accident happened 6 months ago, and everything changed. Rachel, who had seemed nice enough when she married Daddy 2 years ago, transformed into someone cold and mean. She stopped pretending to care the moment the funeral ended. "You are nothing but a burden," Rachel had hissed one night. "Your father left me with nothing but debt and a useless child." Sophie had learned to stay quiet, to make herself small, to avoid Rachel's anger. But nothing she did was ever good enough. Rachel sold everything. The furniture, Daddy's guitar, even Sophie's toys and books. And then Rachel brought her here, to this terrible empty house, and left her behind like trash. Now Sophie sat on the dusty floor in what might have been a living room once, hugging her knees to her chest. She wore the same pink sweater and jeans she had been wearing for 3 days. Her brown hair hung in tangles around her thin face. She had not eaten since the morning Rachel brought her here, when she had been given a single granola bar. The sun was setting outside, painting the walls with orange and purple shadows. Soon it would be dark again. Sophie hated the darkness most of all. At night, the house made strange sounds. Creaking. Settling. Sometimes she heard animals scratching in the walls. She would curl up in the corner of the empty bedroom upstairs, shivering, trying not to cry because crying made her throat hurt and she was already so thirsty. She wondered if anyone would ever find her. She wondered if Rachel had told anyone where she was. She wondered if this was how she would die, alone in an abandoned house, forgotten by the world. Through the window, she watched as streetlights began to flicker on. The November air was getting colder. Winter was coming, and Sophie had no coat, no blanket, nothing to keep her warm. She thought about school, about her teacher Mrs. Anderson who always smiled at her. Did anyone notice she was missing? Did anyone care? Sophie's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car engine. Her heart leaped. She scrambled to the window, pressing her face against the glass so hard it fogged with her breath. A black car was pulling into the driveway. Not Rachel's car. This one was newer, cleaner. Hope and fear battled in her chest. What if it was someone who could help? What if it was someone dangerous? Rachel had warned her once that bad people lived in empty houses, that Sophie should never trust strangers. But Rachel had also abandoned her, so maybe Rachel's words meant nothing. The car door opened. A tall man stepped out, wearing a dark blue coat and carrying a clipboard. He looked at the house, then wrote something down. He did not look mean. He looked normal, businesslike. Sophie's hand moved toward the window, ready to knock, ready to call for help. But fear froze her in place. What if he did not believe her? What if he thought she was lying? What if he called Rachel, and Rachel came back angry? Sophie had learned that adults did not always help children. Sometimes they made things worse. The man walked around the side of the house, disappearing from view. Sophie heard his footsteps on the porch, heard him trying the front door. It was locked. Rachel had locked it from the outside, trapping Sophie inside. The man's footsteps moved away, back toward his car. Panic seized Sophie's chest. He was leaving. This might be her only chance. She ran to the front window and pounded on it with both fists, ignoring the pain in her weak arms. She opened her mouth to scream, but her voice came out as barely a whisper, dry and cracked from days without proper water. "Help," she croaked. "Please help me." The footsteps stopped. She obeyed, taking smaller sips, but her eyes never left his face, as if she was afraid he might disappear like a dream. Thomas assessed the situation quickly. The child was clearly malnourished, dehydrated, and in shock. The house was completely empty, no sign anyone had been living here. This was not neglect. This was deliberate abandonment. He had called the police before breaking in, but Sophie needed immediate care. "I have a sandwich in my car," he said. "Turkey and cheese. Would you like some?" Sophie nodded eagerly. Thomas stood and jogged back to his car, grabbing his lunch bag from the front seat. When he returned, Sophie was still sitting in the same spot, as if she was afraid to move. He sat down beside her, cross-legged on the floor, and unwrapped the sandwich, breaking it into smaller pieces. "Here you go. Take your time." Sophie ate like she had never seen food before, careful but desperate. Between bites, she started to talk, her words tumbling out in a rush as if she had been holding them inside for too long. She told him about her father, Michael Bennett, a music teacher who had died in a car accident 6 months ago. She told him about Rachel, the stepmother who had seemed nice at first but turned cruel after the funeral. She told him about being pulled out of school, about Rachel selling everything, about being brought to this house and left behind. Thomas listened to every word, his heart breaking with each sentence. This child had lost everything. Her father, her home, her security, and instead of being cared for, she had been thrown away like garbage. "Rachel said I was a burden," Sophie said quietly, staring at her hands. "She said my father should not have had a child because he could not afford me. She said I ruined her life." "Sophie, look at me." Thomas waited until her eyes met his. "Nothing about this is your fault. Nothing. You are a child, and you deserve to be loved and cared for. What Rachel did is wrong, and she will answer for it. Do you understand?" Sophie nodded, but Thomas could see she did not quite believe him yet. That kind of damage would take time to heal. The sound of sirens approached outside. Thomas saw Sophie tense, her body going rigid with fear. "It is okay," he assured her. "That is the police and probably an ambulance. They are here to help you. I promise." Detective Patricia Marr was the first through the door, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She took one look at Sophie and her expression hardened. "What do we have here?" she asked, kneeling down to Sophie's level. Thomas explained the situation while paramedics checked Sophie's vital signs. She was dehydrated, malnourished, but stable. They wanted to take her to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital for a full examination. "No," Sophie said suddenly, grabbing Thomas's sleeve. "Please do not leave me." The fear in her voice cut through him like a knife. This child had been abandoned once already. She was terrified it would happen again. "I will come with you to the hospital," Thomas said, making a decision that would change his life. "I will not leave you alone." Detective Moore raised an eyebrow but nodded. "We will need to contact Child Protective Services. This child needs immediate placement." "I understand. But right now, she needs to feel safe. Let me ride with her, in the ambulance. We can sort out the rest at the hospital." In the ambulance, Sophie held Thomas's hand the entire way, her small fingers gripping tight. She asked him questions about his life, about his family, about anything that made the world seem normal again. Thomas told her about his wife Catherine, about their daughter Emma who was away at college, about their golden retriever named Buster who loved to chase squirrels. "Do you think Buster would like me?" Sophie asked. "Buster loves everyone. He would probably lick your face until you laughed." Sophie smiled for the first time, a small fragile thing, but real. At the hospital, Thomas called Catherine while doctors examined Sophie. He explained everything, knowing his wife would understand. Catherine had always been the kind of person who helped others, who saw need and responded with action. "Bring her home," Catherine said without hesitation. "We have the guest room. We can figure out the foster care process. That child needs stability right now, not to be shuffled through the system." "I knew you would say that," Thomas said, relief flooding through him. "I love you." "I love you too. Now take care of that little girl." Detective Moore interviewed Sophie gently but thoroughly. The story was clear. Rachel Bennett had deliberately abandoned her stepdaughter in an empty house, likely planning to disappear and start a new life somewhere else. An APB was put out for Rachel's arrest. By midnight, the paperwork was complete. Child Protective Services, impressed by Thomas's intervention and the hospital's assessment of Sophie's need for immediate stability, granted him and Catherine emergency foster placement. It was unusual, fast-tracked by the circumstances and Thomas's spotless background check. His reputation in Nashville helped. Everyone knew Thomas Crawford as a man of integrity. When Thomas carried a sleeping Sophie to his car, wrapped in a hospital blanket, he made her a silent promise. This child would never be abandoned again. She would have a home, a family, and a chance to heal. The drive to Green Hills took 20 minutes. Catherine was waiting on the front porch when they arrived, the house glowing with warm light. Buster barked excitedly inside, his tail thumping against the door. Sophie stirred in Thomas's arms as he carried her inside. She looked around at the comfortable furniture, the photographs on the walls, the sense of home that filled every room. "Is this real?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart," Catherine said, appearing beside them with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This is real. Welcome home." Morning sunlight streamed through pale blue curtains, waking Sophie slowly. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and panic seized her chest. Then she saw the soft comforter covering her, felt the mattress beneath her back, noticed the bookshelf filled with colorful spines and the desk with a lamp shaped like a crescent moon. She was in the Crawfords' house. This was real. The door opened quietly and Catherine peeked in, carrying a tray. When she saw Sophie was awake, she smiled. "Good morning, sunshine. I thought you might be hungry. I made pancakes." Sophie sat up slowly, still not quite believing this was happening. Catherine set the tray on the bed. Pancakes with maple syrup, strawberries on the side, orange juice in a real glass. More food than Sophie had seen in months. "Is this all for me?" she asked. "All for you. Take your time. There is no rush." Catherine sat in the chair by the window while Sophie ate, not hovering, just present. She explained that Thomas had gone to his office but would be home for lunch. She told Sophie about Buster, who was currently in the backyard but very eager to meet her. She spoke about the day ahead in simple, reassuring terms. "A social worker named Miss Jennifer Carlson will come by this afternoon. She just wants to talk to you. Make sure you are doing okay. There is nothing to be scared about. Then tomorrow, if you feel up to it, we thought we might go shopping for some clothes and things you need. Does that sound all right?" Sophie nodded, her mouth full of pancake. It tasted like heaven. After breakfast, Catherine showed Sophie around the house properly. It was a beautiful two-story home in Green Hills, one of Nashville's nicest neighborhoods. Large windows let in natural light. Family photos covered the walls, showing Thomas and Catherine through the years, their daughter Emma growing from a baby to a young woman. "Is Emma coming home?" Sophie asked, studying a picture of a smiling girl with dark hair and her mother's kind eyes. "She is in Boston at college, studying to be a doctor. But she knows all about you. I called her last night. She said to tell you welcome, and that she cannot wait to meet you at Thanksgiving." The idea of Thanksgiving, of holidays, of a future, felt strange to Sophie. For so long, she had only thought about surviving each day. Buster was everything Thomas promised. The golden retriever bounded up to Sophie with such enthusiasm that she laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. He licked her face and wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. Sophie sat on the floor and buried her face in his soft fur, feeling something inside her chest unclench just a little. Miss Carlson arrived at 2 o'clock. She was a young woman with red hair and a warm smile, carrying a folder of paperwork. She spoke to Sophie alone first, in the living room, asking gentle questions about her time in the abandoned house and about Rachel. Sophie told the truth about everything. About how Rachel had become mean after Daddy died. About being pulled out of school. About the house on Brookside Avenue. Miss Carlson wrote everything down, her expression serious but kind. "You were very brave," Miss Carlson said when Sophie finished. "What happened to you was wrong, and it was not your fault. Do you understand that?" Thomas said the same thing. "Thomas is right. Now, I need to ask you something important. How do you feel about staying here with Thomas and Catherine?" Sophie's heart jumped. "Can I? Really? If that is what you want, then yes. They have applied to be your foster parents, and I think this is a good placement for you. But I need to know how you feel." "I want to stay," Sophie said quickly. "Please. They are nice to me. They feed me and gave me a bed, and Catherine made pancakes, and Buster is the best dog ever." Miss Carlson smiled. "Then that is what we will do. You will stay here while we work on finding Rachel and figuring out what happens next. Thomas and Catherine will take care of you. They will make sure you go to school, see a doctor, have everything you need. And I will come check on you every week to make sure you are happy and healthy. Okay?" Relief washed over Sophie like a wave. "Okay." After Miss Carlson left, Catherine suggested they sit on the back porch. The November afternoon was cool but sunny, and the backyard was beautiful with old oak trees and a garden bed full of chrysanthemums. They sat on a porch swing, Buster at their feet, and Catherine asked Sophie what she liked to do. "I like to paint," Sophie said quietly. "At least, I used to. Daddy taught me. He said I was really good. But Rachel threw away all my supplies after he died. She said art was a waste of time." Catherine's expression tightened with anger, but her voice stayed gentle. "Art is not a waste of time. Art is beautiful and important. Would you like to paint again?" "Really? Really? Tomorrow, when we go shopping, we will get you art supplies. Whatever you want. Paints, brushes, paper, canvas, everything." Sophie felt tears prick her eyes, but these were different tears. Happy tears. "Thank you." "You do not need to thank me, sweetheart. You deserve good things." Thomas came home at 5 o'clock and found Sophie and Catherine in the kitchen, making dinner together. Sophie was stirring a pot of sauce, while Catherine prepared garlic bread. They were talking and laughing, and the sight made Thomas's chest tight with emotion. "Something smells amazing," he said, setting down his briefcase. "Sophie is helping me make spaghetti," Catherine said. "She is an excellent assistant chef." During dinner, Thomas and Catherine told Sophie more about themselves. Thomas explained that he bought old houses, fixed them up, and either sold them or rented them to families who needed affordable homes. That was why he had been at the Brookside Avenue house. He had planned to renovate it and sell it, never expecting to find a child inside. "I am glad you bought that house," Sophie said quietly. "I am glad it was you who found me." "Me too, Sophie. Me too." After dinner, they watched a movie together, something light and funny. Sophie sat between them on the couch, Buster's head resting on her feet, and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Safe. Before bed, Catherine helped Sophie brush her teeth and get into pajamas Catherine had borrowed from a neighbor's daughter. They were a little big, but soft and clean. Catherine tucked her into bed, smoothing the blanket around her shoulders. "Catherine," Sophie said as the woman turned to leave. "Yes, sweetheart." "What happens if Rachel comes back?" Catherine sat on the edge of the bed, her expression serious. "Rachel is not going to take you away. The police are looking for her, and when they find her, she will have to answer for what she did. But even if they do not find her, you are safe here. Thomas and I are going to make sure of that. We are going to take care of you." "You promise?" "I promise." Sophie believed her. Maybe it was foolish to trust so quickly, but something in Catherine's eyes made Sophie feel like this was different. These people were different. "Good night, Sophie. Sweet dreams." "Good night." After Catherine left, Sophie lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. She heard Thomas and Catherine talking quietly downstairs. She heard Buster's paws clicking on the hardwood floor. She heard the hum of the heater kicking on, filling the room with warmth. For the first time in 6 months, Sophie closed her eyes and felt hope. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Sophie went shopping with Catherine and came home with bags full of clothes, art supplies, books, and toys. She had her own room, her own things, and the freedom to be a child again. But healing was not simple. Some mornings, Sophie woke up expecting to find herself back in the abandoned house. Some nights, she had nightmares about Rachel coming back, about being left behind again. Thomas and Catherine were always there, patient and understanding, reminding her that she was safe. Doctor visits revealed the extent of the damage. Sophie was underweight and vitamin deficient. She had mild dental problems from lack of care. But nothing permanent. Nothing that good food, medicine, and time could not fix. The pediatrician, Dr. Helen Martinez, was kind and thorough, explaining everything to Sophie in ways she could understand. "You are going to be just fine," Dr. Martinez said, giving Sophie a sticker of a smiling sun. "Your foster parents are taking excellent care of you." The therapist was harder. Sophie did not want to talk to a stranger about her feelings, about her father's death, about Rachel's cruelty. But Miss Pamela Green was gentle and creative. She used art therapy, letting Sophie paint and draw while they talked. Slowly, Sophie began to open up. "I dream about my dad sometimes," Sophie admitted one session, painting a picture of a man holding a guitar. "He used to sing to me. He made up songs about whatever I was doing that day. Silly songs that made me laugh." "What do you think your dad would want for you now?" Miss Green asked. Sophie thought about it, her brush moving across the canvas. "He would want me to be happy. He would want me to be safe. He always said I should be brave and kind, no matter what." "You are brave, Sophie. So brave." At home, Sophie began to relax. She explored every corner of the house, played with Buster for hours, helped Catherine in the garden. Thomas taught her how to use basic tools, letting her help him build a birdhouse for the backyard. These simple activities built trust, showed Sophie that this life was real and lasting. One evening, Thomas was in his study working on paperwork when Sophie knocked on the door. "Come in." She entered shyly, carrying a photo she had found in one of the boxes of her father's things that police had recovered from Rachel's apartment. It showed her father as a young man, standing with another young man, both of them wearing college sweatshirts and grinning at the camera. "Thomas, is this you?" Thomas took the photo, his eyes widening. "Oh my goodness. Yes. That is me. And that is your father. We went to Vanderbilt together. We were roommates for 2 years." Sophie's eyes went wide. "You knew my daddy?" "I did. I had not seen him in years, lost touch after we graduated. I did not make the connection until just now. Your last name is Bennett. Michael Bennett. He was one of the best friends I ever had." Thomas sat down, pulling Sophie into the chair beside him, and told her stories about her father. About how Michael had been the life of every party, always with his guitar, always ready to make people smile. About how Michael had loaned Thomas money when Thomas's own father got sick, never asking for it back. About how Michael had talked constantly about wanting to be a father someday, to have a family. "He loved you so much," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "Even before you were born, when he told me your mother was pregnant, he was over the moon with joy. He said being a father was going to be his greatest adventure." Sophie felt tears on her cheeks. "I miss him so much." "I know you do. And it is okay to miss him. It is okay to be sad. But Sophie, I want you to know something. Your father would be so proud of how strong you are. And I think maybe there is a reason I was the one who found you that day. Maybe your dad sent me to you, in a way." Sophie thought about that. She liked the idea that her father was still watching over her, still protecting her, even from wherever he was now. "Can you tell me more stories about him?" she asked. "I would love to." They spent the next hour talking, and for the first time since her father's death, Sophie felt connected to him again. Not through grief, but through happy memories shared by someone who had loved him too. The breakthrough came during the 3rd week. Sophie was painting in her room when Catherine knocked on the door. She looked serious, and Sophie's heart jumped with fear. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, sweetheart. But Detective Moore is here. She wants to talk to you. Is that okay?" Sophie nodded, setting down her brush. They went downstairs together, where Detective Moore waited in the living room with Thomas. Hello, Sophie. I have some news. We found Rachel. Sophie gripped Catherine's hand. Where? She was in Atlanta, Georgia, trying to board a flight to California. She is in custody now, and she will face charges for what she did to you. She cannot hurt you anymore. Relief and anger and confusion swirled inside Sophie. Why did she do it? Why did she leave me? Detective Ma's expression softened. I cannot answer that, honey. Some people make terrible choices. But I can tell you that what she did was not about you. It was about her own selfishness. You did nothing wrong. What happens now? Thomas asked. Rachel will stand trial. Sophie will need to give testimony, but we can arrange for her to do it via video so she does not have to be in the same room. In the meantime, the state is moving forward with terminating Rachel's parental rights, since she was your legal guardian after your father passed. That means you will officially be in the foster system until a permanent placement is arranged. We want to adopt her, Catherine said suddenly, her voice firm. Thomas and I have discussed it. We want to make this permanent, if that is what Sophie wants. Everyone turned to look at Sophie. She stared at Catherine and Thomas, these people who had saved her, cared for her, given her a home. Did she want this? Did she dare to hope for something so wonderful? Really? Sophie whispered. You want to keep me? Forever. Forever, Thomas said. If you will have us. Sophie threw herself at them, wrapping her arms around both of them, sobbing into Catherine's shoulder. Yes. Yes, please. I want to stay. I want to be your daughter. Catherine held her tight, crying too. Then that is exactly what will happen. Detective Moss smiled, wiping at her own eyes. Well then, I will start the paperwork. This is going to be a beautiful ending to a terrible story. The legal process was complex but steady. Detective Moore worked tirelessly to build a case against Rachel Bennett, documenting every instance of neglect and abuse that Sophie had endured. Rachel's own actions made the case simple. She had abandoned a child in an empty house without food or water. There was no defense for that. Thomas and Catherine hired a family lawyer, Benjamin Parker, to handle the adoption proceedings. He was a grandfatherly man with silver hair and a gentle manner, who specialized in adoption cases. He explained each step to Sophie in terms she could understand, making sure she felt involved in the process. This is your life, Sophie. Your voice matters. If you want to be adopted by Thomas and Catherine, then we will make that happen. The court wants to make sure you are safe and happy, and from everything I can see, you are both. Sophie attended meetings with social workers, therapists, and lawyers. Each time, she told the same story honestly. Yes, she wanted to stay with the Crawfords. Yes, they treated her well. Yes, she felt safe and loved. Miss Carlson, the social worker, visited every week, always pleased with what she found. Sophie was gaining weight, her color was healthy, and most importantly, she was smiling. The transformation from the frightened child found in an abandoned house to the girl who now laughed and played was remarkable. You are doing a beautiful thing, Miss Carlson told Thomas and Catherine during one visit. Not everyone would open their home like this. Sophie is not everyone, Catherine said, squeezing Sophie's shoulder. She is special. She is ours. In early December, Sophie started attending Hillsborough Elementary School. Catherine had debated waiting until after the holidays, but the therapist thought routine and normalcy would be good for Sophie. She was enrolled in 3rd grade, placed in Miss Jennifer Walsh's class. The first day was terrifying. Sophie stood in front of the classroom while Miss Walsh introduced her, 23 pairs of eyes staring at her. But Miss Walsh was warm and welcoming, and she had prepared the class ahead of time to be kind to their new student. At recess, a girl with blonde braids approached Sophie on the playground. Hi, I am Bethany Cooper. Do you want to play hopscotch? I do not really know how, Sophie admitted. I can teach you. It is easy. Bethany became Sophie's first real friend, someone her own age who did not know about the abandonment, about Rachel, about any of it. To Bethany, Sophie was just a new girl who was fun and kind and really good at drawing. Miss Walsh noticed Sophie's artistic ability right away. During art time, while other students struggled with drawing trees, Sophie created detailed landscapes with shading and perspective. Miss Walsh pulled her aside after class one day. "Sophie, you have real talent. Have you ever thought about entering an art competition?" "What kind of competition?" "The Tennessee Children's Art Festival. It is held every spring. Young artists from all over the state submit work. I think you should enter. Would you like that?" Sophie's heart raced with excitement. "Really? You think I am good enough?" "I think you are wonderful. Talk to your parents about it. I would be happy to help you prepare a piece." That night at dinner, Sophie told Thomas and Catherine about the competition. They were immediately supportive, helping her brainstorm ideas for what she might create. They set up a proper art studio in one of the spare rooms, with an easel, professional paints, and good lighting. "This is your space," Thomas said, gesturing around the room. "You can create anything you want here." Sophie stood in the center of the room, overwhelmed. 6 months ago, she had nothing. Now she had a family, a home, a school, friends, and a place to make art. It felt like a dream. Over the next few weeks, Sophie threw herself into her artwork. She decided to paint something that represented her journey. A house in darkness on one side, gradually transforming into a bright home filled with light and flowers on the other. She called it From Night to Day. Bethany came over to play most weekends. The two girls became inseparable, sharing secrets and giggles. Bethany's parents, Robert and Laura Cooper, owned a bookstore in downtown Nashville called Cooper's Corner Books. They were warm people who welcomed Sophie into their family gatherings without hesitation. "Your daughter is delightful," Laura told Catherine one afternoon when she picked up Bethany. "She is so polite and creative. Bethany adores her." "The feeling is mutual," Catherine said. "Sophie talks about Bethany constantly." Detective Mark called in mid-December with an update. Rachel's trial date was set for February. The prosecutor was confident about conviction given the evidence and Sophie's testimony. Rachel had refused to explain her actions beyond claiming she could not afford to care for Sophie, which made no sense since she had never tried to find proper placement through the system. She just wanted to be free of responsibility, Detective Moss said bluntly during a meeting at the Crawford house. She saw Sophie as a burden and took the easiest way out, not caring what happened to her. "It is one of the most callous cases I have worked." Sophie listened quietly. She had stopped trying to understand Rachel's actions. Miss Green, her therapist, helped her see that some questions had no good answers, and that was okay. What mattered now was moving forward. The holidays approached, and with them came Sophie's first real Christmas in years. Rachel had not celebrated holidays, claiming they were too expensive. But the Crawfords went all out. Thomas brought home a 7-foot tree, and Sophie helped decorate it with Catherine, hanging ornaments and stringing lights while Christmas music played. Emma came home from Boston for winter break, and Sophie was nervous about meeting her. What if Emma was angry that her parents were adopting someone new? What if she felt replaced? But Emma swept into the house like a whirlwind of energy and warmth, dropping her bags and immediately pulling Sophie into a hug. "You must be Sophie. I am so happy to meet you. Mom has sent me like a million pictures. You are even cuter in person." Sophie giggled, instantly charmed. Emma was 20 years old, studying pre-med at Boston University, and she had her mother's kindness and her father's determination. She treated Sophie like a little sister immediately, with no hesitation or resentment. "Want to see something cool?" Emma asked, pulling out her phone. "I made a photo album of all our family traditions, so you know what to expect. There is a lot of cookie baking involved. I hope you like sugar." That night, the four of them sat around the fireplace, drinking hot chocolate and talking about plans for Christmas. Emma told stories about past holidays, about the year their cat knocked over the tree, and the time Thomas tried to cook Christmas dinner and nearly burned down the kitchen. Everyone laughed, and Sophie felt herself relaxing into this new family dynamic. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said during a quiet moment. "Anything," Thomas replied. "When I am adopted, will my last name change to Crawford?" "It can, if you wanted to," Catherine said gently. "You can be Sophie Crawford. Or you can keep Bennett to honor your father. Or you can be Sophie Bennett Crawford. It is entirely up to you." Sophie thought about it. "I want to be Sophie Bennett Crawford. I do not want to forget my dad, but I want everyone to know I belong to you too." That is perfect, Emma said, squeezing her hand. Welcome to the family, Sophie Bennett Crawford. Christmas morning was magical. Sophie woke up to find presents under the tree, more than she had ever seen in her life. Thomas and Catherine had been thoughtful with every gift: art supplies, books, clothes, a beautiful new winter coat, and a locket with a picture of her father on one side and the Crawford family on the other. So you can always keep both families close to your heart, Catherine explained. Sophie wore the locket every day after that. The week after Christmas, Miss Walsh called with exciting news. She had submitted Sophie's painting from Night to Day to the Tennessee Children's Art Festival, and it had been accepted. Not only accepted, but selected as a finalist. Sophie would find out in March if she won any awards. I am so proud of you, Miss Walsh said. Your work stood out among hundreds of submissions. You have a real gift. Sophie could not stop smiling for days. She called Bethany immediately, and they squealed together over the phone like the 8-year-old girls they were. Thomas and Catherine took her out for ice cream to celebrate, even though it was freezing outside. I never thought anything good would happen to me again, Sophie said, licking chocolate ice cream from her spoon. After Daddy died, everything was so bad. I thought that was just how life was going to be forever. Life has ups and downs, Thomas said. You went through something terrible. But you survived it, and now you get to have good things again. You deserve every bit of happiness that comes your way. As January arrived, bringing cold rain and gray skies, Sophie's life continued to brighten. She was thriving in school, her grades excellent. She had friends, a stable home, and the adoption process was moving forward smoothly. Rachel's trial loomed on the horizon, but Sophie felt ready to face it with her new family beside her. One evening, while helping Catherine make dinner, Sophie asked a question that had been on her mind. Do you think my dad would like you guys? Catherine paused, considering the question seriously. I think he would. Thomas told me how kind your father was, how much he loved helping people. I think he would be grateful that you are safe and loved. I think he would approve. I think so too, Sophie said. Sometimes I talk to him at night, in my head. I tell him about my day. I like to think he can hear me. I am sure he can, Catherine said, pulling her close. And I bet he is so proud of you. Sophie believed that. She had to. The story of Sophie's rescue had spread through Nashville's Green Hills community, mostly through Emma's social media posts and word of mouth at Hillsborough Elementary. People were moved by the tale of the abandoned little girl who had been saved by a kind stranger, and the community responded with overwhelming generosity. It started with Helen Grant, who owned Sweet Mercer Bakery on Hillsborough Pike. She had heard about Sophie from her granddaughter, who was in Sophie's class. One morning in mid-January, Helen showed up at the Crawford house with boxes of fresh pastries and a proposal. I want to do a fundraiser, Helen said, sitting in the Crawfords' living room with coffee and her famous cinnamon rolls. For Sophie, yes, but also for other kids in the foster system. I was thinking we could do a bake sale, donate the proceeds to Child Protective Services for supplies and support for foster families. That is incredibly kind, Catherine said. But Sophie has everything she needs. I know that. You and Thomas have been wonderful. But there are other kids out there who need help. Sophie's story can make a difference for them too. What do you think, Sophie? Would you be comfortable with that? Sophie, who had been quietly eating a cinnamon roll, looked up. You mean help other kids who do not have families? Exactly. Kids who are waiting for someone like Thomas and Catherine to find them. I think that is a really good idea, Sophie said. I was so scared when I was alone. If we can help other kids not be scared, we should do it. Helen beamed. You are a special girl, Sophie Bennett Crawford. Let's make this happen. The bake sale was scheduled for the first Saturday in February at the bakery. Helen spread the word through local businesses, churches, and schools. The community responded enthusiastically. People donated baked goods, time, and money. Local news stations even picked up the story, running a brief segment about the fundraiser and Sophie's rescue. Thomas and Catherine were protective of Sophie's privacy, making sure her face was not shown on television and her location was kept vague. But they allowed her story to be told in broad strokes because it inspired people to act with kindness. The day of the bake sale, Sophie stood behind the counter at Sweet Mercy Bakery alongside Helen and Bethany, selling cookies and brownies and pies. The line stretched out the door and down the block. People came not just to buy baked goods but to meet Sophie, to tell her they were glad she was safe, to shake Thomas and Catherine's hands. One elderly man, Walter Hughes, approached with tears in his eyes. "My granddaughter was in foster care for 3 years before my wife and I could get custody of her. The social workers who helped us were angels. Thank you for doing this." A young couple, Nathan and Amy Richardson, bought $50 worth of cookies and then asked to speak with Thomas privately. "We have been thinking about becoming foster parents," Nathan said. "Reading about what you did for Sophie inspired us. How do we start the process?" Thomas gave the Miss Carlson's contact information and encouraged them to attend an orientation session. The system needs good people like you. If you are serious about this, there are kids out there who need you. By the end of the day, the bake sale had raised over $8,000 for Child Protective Services. Helen presented the check to Miss Carlson the following week at a small ceremony attended by local media. Sophie was there, standing between Thomas and Catherine, smiling shyly as cameras flashed. "This is what community looks like," Miss Carlson said, holding up the check. "One person's kindness creates a ripple effect." Thomas Crawford found Sophie and opened his home. The Crawfords are adopting her, giving her a permanent family. And now their actions have inspired an entire community to help other children in need. This money will provide clothing, school supplies, and emergency resources for foster children throughout Davidson County. Thank you all. After the ceremony, several people approached the Crawfords with stories of their own connections to foster care and adoption. It seemed like everyone knew someone whose life had been touched by the system. Sophie listened to these stories, realizing her experience was not unique. There were thousands of kids out there who needed help, who needed families, who needed kindness. At church the following Sunday, Pastor James Monroe mentioned Sophie's story during his sermon, talking about how helping one person can change the world. The congregation gave the Crawfords a standing ovation, which made Sophie blush and hide her face against Catherine's shoulder. After the service, a woman named Margaret Stevens approached them. She was a retired teacher in her 70s, small and energetic, with silver hair and bright blue eyes. "I was a foster child once," Margaret said. "Back in the 1950s. My parents died in a fire when I was 9. I was placed with a family who treated me like their own daughter. They saved my life. When I see what you are doing for Sophie, it reminds me that there are still good people in the world. Thank you." She pressed a $100 bill into Sophie's hand. "Buy yourself something special, dear. Or save it for college. Either way, it is yours." Sophie tried to refuse, but Margaret insisted. Kindness should be paid forward. Someday, when you are older, you will help someone else. For now, let others help you. School became a place where Sophie felt celebrated rather than pitted. Her classmates treated her normally, as just another kid, but the parents and teachers went out of their way to be kind. Room mothers brought extra snacks for the class. The PE teacher let Sophie be team captain during kickball. Small gestures that reminded her she was valued. In late January, something unexpected happened. Cooper's Corner Books, the bookstore owned by Bethany's parents, hosted a children's book reading event. They invited Sophie to attend as a special guest, asking if she would display some of her artwork in the store's community space. Sophie was nervous but excited. She selected 5 of her favorite paintings, including From Night to Day, and Thomas helped her frame them professionally. On the night of the event, the bookstore was packed with families from school and the neighborhood. Robert Cooper introduced Sophie to the crowd. This young artist is only 8 years old, but her work shows incredible talent and heart. Each piece tells a story. I encourage you to look at them carefully and see what she has to say. People moved through the space, studying Sophie's paintings, asking her questions about her process and inspiration. Several people asked if the paintings were for sale. Sophie had not even considered that possibility. "We could donate the money to more foster care programs," she suggested to Thomas. "Or you could keep the money and start a college fund," Thomas countered. "It is your art. You should decide what to do with it." Sophie thought about it. "Can we do both? Sell some and donate the money, and keep some for me? That sounds like a perfect compromise." By the end of the evening, 3 of Sophie's paintings had sold for a total of $500. Sophie decided to donate $300 to Child Protective Services and keep $200 for herself. She felt proud, not just of the money, but of the fact that people valued her work enough to pay for it. Bethany's parents insisted on displaying Sophie's remaining paintings in the bookstore permanently, creating a little gallery space for local young artists. Sophie's work would be the first featured. "You are starting something special here," Laura Cooper said. "Other kids will see your art and feel inspired to create their own. That is a beautiful legacy." The kindness kept coming. A local art supply store, Harrison's Art World, heard about Sophie's talent and donated a full set of professional-grade paints and brushes. The owner, Daniel Harrison, delivered them personally. "Every artist needs good tools," Daniel said, presenting the supplies to a stunned Sophie. "These are on the house. I want to see what you create with them." Miss Walsh helped Sophie write thank you notes to everyone who had shown her kindness: Helen Grant, Margaret Stevens, Daniel Harrison, the Cooper family, and dozens of others. Sophie worked carefully on each note, trying to express how much their generosity meant to her. "Why are people so nice?" Sophie asked Catherine one evening while addressing envelopes. "Because kindness is contagious," Catherine said. "When people see someone do a good thing, it makes them want to do good things too. You and Thomas started a chain reaction. People want to be part of something positive, something hopeful. Your story gives them that chance." "I did not do anything special, though. I just survived." Surviving takes courage, Sophie. And the way you have handled everything with grace and gratitude has inspired people. You let people help you, and that matters. Some people are too proud to accept help, but you understood that accepting kindness with gratitude is its own form of strength. If you have been moved by how this community came together to support Sophie, I want to ask you something. What would your community do if they knew a child needed help? Would they step up like Nashville did? Subscribe to this channel and share this story so more people are inspired to look out for the vulnerable among us. Comment below and tell me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Your story matters. Sophie thought about that conversation for days. She had never considered herself brave. She had just done what she had to do to survive. But maybe Catherine was right. Maybe accepting help was brave too. As February approached, bringing with it Rachel's trial and the art competition results, Sophie felt ready. She had a family who loved her, a community that supported her, friends who valued her, and a future that looked bright. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would not face them alone. February arrived with cold rain that drummed against the windows and turned the world gray. But inside the Crawford house, warmth and light filled every room. Sophie had been with the family for 3 months now, and the transformation was complete. She was no longer the frightened, malnourished child Thomas had found in an abandoned house. She was confident, healthy, and genuinely happy. The first week of February brought news from the Tennessee Children's Art Festival. Miss Walsh called the house on a Tuesday evening, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Is this Mrs. Crawford? May I speak with Sophie?" Catherine handed Sophie the phone, mouthing, "It is Miss Walsh." "Hello," Sophie said nervously. "Sophie, I have the most wonderful news. Your painting, From Night to Day, won first place in the age 8 to 10 category. You are a champion." Sophie's mouth dropped open. She looked at Catherine, then at Thomas who had just walked in from work, then back at the phone. "First place? Really? Are you sure?" "I am absolutely sure. The judges said your work was technically impressive and emotionally powerful. You won a blue ribbon, a trophy, and a full scholarship to the Tennessee Summer Arts Academy in June. Sophie, this is a huge deal. The Summer Academy is one of the best art programs in the state." Sophie could not speak. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling so wide her face hurt. Catherine took the phone and spoke with Miss Walsh while Thomas pulled Sophie into a hug. "I am so proud of you," he said. "Your father would be boasting with pride right now." That weekend, the whole family attended the awards ceremony at the Frist Art Museum in downtown Nashville. Sophie wore a new navy blue dress that Catherine had bought for the occasion, and she clutched Thomas's hand tightly as they walked through the museum's grand halls. The children's artwork was displayed throughout the main gallery, each piece labeled with the artist's name and age. Sophie found her painting hanging in a place of honor, a blue ribbon attached to the frame and a small plaque beneath it reading, First place, ages 8 to 10, from night to day by Sophie Bennett Crawford. That is your name up there, Emma said, squeezing her shoulder. Sophie Bennett Crawford. It is official now. The adoption paperwork had been finalized just days earlier. Sophie was legally their daughter. Her name officially changed to include both her father's surname and her new family's name. She belonged to them completely now, and they to her. The ceremony was lovely. The museum director spoke about the importance of nurturing young artists. Each winner was called to the stage to receive their trophy and ribbon. When Sophie's name was announced, the Crawford family cheered louder than anyone, and Bethany, who had come with her parents, whistled through her fingers. Sophie walked to the stage on shaky legs, her heart pounding. She accepted the trophy from the director, a beautiful crystal piece with her name engraved on it, and stood at the microphone. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but clear. "I painted this picture because I wanted to show that even when things are really dark, they can get bright again. Thank you to my family for giving me light." The audience applauded, and Sophie hurried back to her seat, her face burning. But she felt proud. So proud. After the ceremony, several people approached the Crawfords to congratulate Sophie and ask about her work. A woman named Diane Foster, who ran a local art gallery, gave Thomas her card. "If Sophie ever wants to display her work professionally, please call me. I think she has a real future as an artist." Thomas pocketed the card, grateful but protective. Sophie was only 8. She had time to figure out her future. But good news was not finished with them yet. On the second Wednesday of February, Detective Moore called and asked to meet with the family. She arrived that evening, her expression serious but not grim. They gathered in the living room, Sophie sitting between Thomas and Catherine on the couch. "I wanted to update you in person," Detective Moore began. "Rachel's trial was today. She pleaded guilty to all charges: child abandonment, child endangerment, and criminal neglect. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison, with a possibility of parole after 3. Additionally, her parental rights have been permanently terminated. She will never have legal custody of you again, Sophie." Sophie absorbed this information quietly. She had testified via video link 2 weeks ago, telling the judge exactly what happened. It had been hard, reliving those days in the abandoned house, but she had done it with Catherine holding her hand just off camera. "How do you feel about that?" Detective Moore asked gently. "I feel okay," Sophie said slowly. "I do not want her to be part of my life anymore. She was mean to me, and she left me to die. I am glad she cannot hurt me or any other kids." "That is a very mature way to look at it," Detective Moore said. "You should be proud of yourself for having the courage to testify. Your statement helped the judge understand the severity of what she did." After Detective Moore left, the family sat together quietly. Thomas built a fire in the fireplace and they drank hot chocolate, not saying much, just being together. "Is it wrong that I do not feel sad?" Sophie asked eventually. "About Rachel going to prison?" "No, sweetheart," Catherine said. "She hurt you badly. You do not owe her your sympathy. What matters is that you are safe now, and she can never hurt you again." "I just wish." Sophie trailed off. "Wish what?" Thomas prompted. "I wish my real dad was still here. I wish he had never died. Then none of this would have happened." "I wish that too," Thomas said quietly. "Your father was a good man. He deserved more time with you. But Sophie, I need you to understand something. What happened to you was terrible, but it led you here, to us. And we would not trade having you in our lives for anything in the world. Does that make sense?" "I think so. You are saying something good came out of something bad." "Exactly. Life works like that sometimes. We do not get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose what we do next." Sophie nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle into her heart. The following week brought yet another surprise. Miss Carlson stopped by for her regular check-in and brought unexpected news. "I wanted to tell you that Sophie's case has had a significant impact on our department," she said over coffee in the Crawford kitchen. "Since her story became public, we have had 17 new families apply to become foster parents." 17. That is more than we usually get in an entire year. Additionally, donations to our department have increased by 300%. Sophie, your story is changing lives. How? Sophie asked, confused. I did not do anything. You survived. You accepted help. You let people see that foster care and adoption can work, that there are good people willing to open their homes. That matters more than you know. There are kids right now who are getting placed with loving families because your story inspired people to act. The weight of that responsibility felt heavy on Sophie's small shoulders, but also good. Her suffering had meaning. Her survival had purpose. That evening, during dinner, Sophie made an announcement. I want to help other kids. Not just by letting people tell my story, but by actually doing something. Can we do that? Thomas and Catherine exchanged glances. What did you have in mind? Thomas asked. I do not know exactly. But there are kids out there who are scared and alone like I was. I want them to know that things can get better. That there are good people who will help them. Can we figure out a way to do that? Yes, Catherine said without hesitation. We can absolutely figure that out. We will work on it together. And so the idea was planted, the seed of something that would grow into something much bigger than any of them expected. But first, there was one more piece of good news to come. On the last Friday of February, Thomas came home from work early with a strange smile on his face. He gathered Catherine and Sophie in the living room. I did something today, he said. Something I have been thinking about for a while. I want to start a foundation. A non-profit organization that helps foster children and supports foster families. I have been working with lawyers to set it up, and today we finalized everything. It is called the Michael Bennett Second Chances Foundation, named after Sophie's father. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? You are naming it after my dad? Your father helped me when I needed it most. He gave me a second chance when I was struggling. Now I want to help give other kids second chances. It seems fitting to honor his memory this way. What will the foundation do? Catherine asked, though she was clearly already on board with the idea. Provide financial support to foster families to help with expenses. Supply school supplies, clothes, and other necessities to kids in the system. Fund activities like summer camps and art classes. Partner with organizations like Miss Carlson's office to identify needs and meet them. I want to use my resources to make a real difference. This is wonderful, Catherine said, her eyes shining with tears. Michael would love this. Can I help? Sophie asked eagerly. With the foundation. Of course. You will be our spokesperson, if you want to be. You can help us decide how to use the money and what programs to support. This is your father's legacy and your story. You should be part of it. Sophie felt something huge swell in her chest. 6 months ago, she had been alone and abandoned, convinced she would die in an empty house. Now she had a family, an education, artistic recognition, and the chance to help other children avoid the pain she had experienced. Daddy would be proud, she whispered. He would be so proud, Thomas agreed. And Sophie, I hope you know that Catherine and I are proud too. You have taken everything terrible that happened to you and turned it into something good. That takes real strength. That night, Sophie lay in bed with Buster curled up at her feet, staring at the ceiling. So much had happened. So much had changed. She thought about the girl she had been just 3 months ago, terrified and starving in an abandoned house. She barely recognized that girl anymore. She reached for the locket around her neck, opening it to look at the 2 pictures inside. Her father on one side, smiling his warm smile. The Crawford family on the other side, with her right in the middle. I am okay, Daddy, she whispered into the darkness. I found a new family. They love me. And we are going to help other kids like me. I hope you are proud. I hope you are watching. I love you. The room was quiet except for Buster's gentle snoring. But Sophie felt a sense of peace settle over her, like a blanket of stars. She was loved. She was safe. She was home. And the best was still to come. March arrived with the promise of spring. Trees began to bud, daffodils pushed through the soil in the Crawfords' garden, and the cold rain gave way to warmer breezes. Sophie had been with her new family for 4 months, and the wounds of her past were healing, though some scars would always remain. The call came on a Wednesday morning while Sophie was at school. Catherine answered the phone to hear Rachel's lawyer on the other end. Mrs. Crawford, this is attorney Mark Simmons. I represent Rachel Bennett. My client would like to meet with Sophie before she begins serving her prison sentence. She wants to apologize. Catherine's first instinct was to refuse immediately. Rachel had no right to ask anything of Sophie after what she had done. But she took a breath and said, I need to discuss this with my husband and with Sophie's therapist. Can I call you back? That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Catherine and Thomas talked with Miss Green on a video call, explaining Rachel's request. This is Sophie's decision, Miss Green said firmly. She is the one who was harmed. We can guide her, but ultimately, she needs to decide if she wants this. Some victims find closure in confronting their abusers. Others find it re-traumatizing. Sophie is strong, but she is also only 8 years old. If she decides to do it, we would be there with her every second, Thomas said. Rachel would not get anywhere near her without us present. Let me talk to Sophie in our next session, Miss Green suggested. I will help her work through what this might mean and what she wants. 2 days later, Sophie sat in Miss Green's office with her art supplies spread across the table. She was working on a painting of Buster chasing butterflies while they talked. Sophie, I need to talk to you about something serious. Rachel's lawyer called your mom. Rachel wants to meet with you to apologize before she goes to prison. You do not have to say yes. This is completely your choice. Sophie's paintbrush froze mid-stroke. She wants to apologize. That is what she says. But I want you to think carefully about this. Seeing Rachel might bring up difficult feelings. It might make you remember things you have worked hard to move past. Or it might give you a sense of closure. There is no right or wrong answer. Sophie set down her brush, wiping her hands on a cloth. What do you think I should do? I think you should decide what feels right to you. If you want to hear what she has to say, we can arrange it in a very controlled environment with your parents there. If you never want to see her again, that is completely valid too. Sophie thought about it for a long time. She remembered the fear, the hunger, the certainty that she was going to die alone. She remembered Rachel's cold eyes and cruel words. But she also remembered what Thomas had said about choosing what comes next. I want to do it, Sophie said finally. I want to hear what she has to say. But I want Mom and Dad there with me. And I want to tell her how she made me feel. That is very brave, Miss Green said. We will make sure you are safe and supported through the whole thing. The meeting was arranged for the following week at a neutral office space at the courthouse. Sophie wore her favorite red sweater for courage. Catherine and Thomas sat on either side of her at a conference table. Miss Green was there too, along with Rachel's lawyer and a court representative. Rachel was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. Sophie barely recognized her. Rachel had lost weight, her hair was limp, and her face was drawn. She looked older, defeated. She sat down across from Sophie, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. I asked for this meeting because I owe you an apology, Rachel began, her voice shaking. What I did to you was unforgivable. I abandoned you. I left you to die. There is no excuse for that. Sophie waited, her face expressionless. Rachel continued, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. After your father died, I felt overwhelmed. I had debt, no job, and suddenly I had a child to care for. I was selfish. I panicked. Instead of asking for help, instead of doing the right thing, I made the worst possible choice. I took you to that house and I left you there, and I told myself you would be. He would be so proud, Thomas agreed. And Sophie, I hope you know that Catherine and I are proud too. You have taken everything terrible that happened to you and turned it into something good. That takes real strength. That night, Sophie lay in bed with Buster curled up at her feet, staring at the ceiling. So much had happened. So much had changed. She thought about the girl she had been just 3 months ago, terrified and starving in an abandoned house. She barely recognized that girl anymore. She reached for the locket around her neck, opening it to look at the 2 pictures inside. Her father on one side, smiling his warm smile. The Crawford family on the other side, with her right in the middle. I am okay, Daddy, she whispered into the darkness. I found a new family. They love me. And we are going to help other kids like me. I hope you are proud. I hope you are watching. I love you." The room was quiet except for Buster's gentle snoring. But Sophie felt a sense of peace settle over her, like a blanket of stars. She was loved. She was safe. She was home. And the best was still to come. March arrived with the promise of spring. Trees began to bud, daffodils pushed through the soil in the Crawfords' garden, and the cold rain gave way to warmer breezes. Sophie had been with her new family for 4 months, and the wounds of her past were healing, though some scars would always remain. The call came on a Wednesday morning while Sophie was at school. Catherine answered the phone to hear Rachel's lawyer on the other end. "Mrs. Crawford, this is attorney Mark Simmons. I represent Rachel Bennett. My client would like to meet with Sophie before she begins serving her prison sentence. She wants to apologize." Catherine's first instinct was to refuse immediately. Rachel had no right to ask anything of Sophie after what she had done. But she took a breath and said, "I need to discuss this with my husband and with Sophie's therapist. Can I call you back?" That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Catherine and Thomas talked with Miss Green on a video call, explaining Rachel's request. "This is Sophie's decision," Miss Green said firmly. "She is the one who was harmed. We can guide her, but ultimately, she needs to decide if she wants this. Some victims find closure in confronting their abusers. Others find it re-traumatizing. Sophie is strong, but she is also only 8 years old. If she decides to do it, we would be there with her every second," Thomas said. "Rachel would not get anywhere near her without us present." "Let me talk to Sophie in our next session," Miss Green suggested. "I will help her work through what this might mean and what she wants." 2 days later, Sophie sat in Miss Green's office with her art supplies spread across the table. She was working on a painting of Buster chasing butterflies while they talked. "Sophie, I need to talk to you about something serious. Rachel's lawyer called your mom. Rachel wants to meet with you to apologize before she goes to prison. You do not have to say yes. This is completely your choice." Sophie's paintbrush froze mid-stroke. "She wants to apologize." "That is what she says. But I want you to think carefully about this. Seeing Rachel might bring up difficult feelings. It might make you remember things you have worked hard to move past. Or it might give you a sense of closure. There is no right or wrong answer." Sophie set down her brush, wiping her hands on a cloth. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should decide what feels right to you. If you want to hear what she has to say, we can arrange it in a very controlled environment with your parents there. If you never want to see her again, that is completely valid too." Sophie thought about it for a long time. She remembered the fear, the hunger, the certainty that she was going to die alone. She remembered Rachel's cold eyes and cruel words. But she also remembered what Thomas had said about choosing what comes next. "I want to do it," Sophie said finally. "I want to hear what she has to say. But I want Mom and Dad there with me. And I want to tell her how she made me feel." "That is very brave," Miss Green said. "We will make sure you are safe and supported through the whole thing." The meeting was arranged for the following week at a neutral office space at the courthouse. Sophie wore her favorite red sweater for courage. Catherine and Thomas sat on either side of her at a conference table. Miss Green was there too, along with Rachel's lawyer and a court representative. Rachel was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. Sophie barely recognized her. Rachel had lost weight, her hair was limp, and her face was drawn. She looked older, defeated. She sat down across from Sophie, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. "I asked for this meeting because I owe you an apology," Rachel began, her voice shaking. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I abandoned you. I left you to die. There is no excuse for that." Sophie waited, her face expressionless. Rachel continued, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "After your father died, I felt overwhelmed. I had debt, no job, and suddenly I had a child to care for. I was selfish. I panicked. Instead of asking for help, instead of doing the right thing, I made the worst possible choice. I took you to that house and I left you there, and I told myself you would be." Sophie was involved in every major decision. She helped design the foundation's logo, a sunrise breaking through dark clouds. She suggested that the first project should be providing art supplies to foster children, since art had been such a source of healing for her. I want other kids to have a way to express their feelings like I did, Sophie explained at a board meeting. Sometimes it is easier to paint how you feel than to say it out loud. The board approved the project unanimously. Within weeks, art supply packages were being distributed to foster homes throughout Davidson County. Each package included paints, brushes, sketchbooks, and a note from Sophie that read, "Art helped me heal. I hope it helps you too. You are not alone." Sophie. A local news station requested an interview about the foundation. Thomas and Catherine were protective, but Sophie wanted to do it. She wanted to use her voice to help others. The interview was conducted at the Crawford House. Sophie sat in the living room with Buster at her feet, answering questions with a maturity beyond her years. "Why did you want to start this foundation?" the reporter asked. "Because I know what it feels like to be scared and alone. I know what it feels like to think nobody cares about you. But then Mr. Thomas found me and he cared. He and Miss Catherine gave me a home and a family. Now want other kids to know that there are people who care about them too. Everyone deserves a second chance." What do you want people to know about foster care? I want them to know that foster kids are not bad kids. We are just kids who had bad things happen to us. We need families and love, just like everyone else. And if you can help, even a little bit, it makes a huge difference. The interview aired that weekend and generated an overwhelming response. The foundation's website received thousands of visits. Donations poured in from across Tennessee and even from other states. People sent letters to Sophie, sharing their own stories of foster care, adoption, and second chances. One letter came from a teenager named Marcus in Memphis who had been in foster care for 6 years. He wrote, "Your story gave me hope. I have been in 4 different homes, and I was starting to think nobody would ever want to keep me. But seeing how your family chose you makes me think maybe someone will choose me too. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story." Sophie read the letter aloud to Thomas and Catherine, tears streaming down her face. "Can we help him? Can we find him a family?" "We can certainly try," Catherine said, already reaching for her phone to contact the Memphis foster care office. The foundation grew rapidly. By the end of March, they had raised over $50,000 and established partnerships with foster care agencies in 5 Tennessee counties. They funded summer camp scholarships for 20 foster children, provided emergency clothing funds for 15 families, and supplied art materials to over 100 kids. Sophie became the face of the foundation, her story resonating with people across the state. But Thomas and Catherine were careful to balance her public role with her need to just be a kid. She still went to school, played with Bethany, painted in her studio, and cuddled with Buster. The foundation work was important, but so was her childhood. One afternoon in late March, Sophie was in her art studio working on a new painting when Emma called from Boston. She was on speakerphone, and her voice was excited. "Sophie, guess what? My medical ethics professor asked me to give a presentation about your story. He wants to use it as an example of how one person's kindness can create systemic change. Is that okay with you? You want to talk about me in college?" Sophie asked, surprised. "Only if you are comfortable with it. I think your story is powerful. It shows how individual actions and institutional systems can work together to help vulnerable people. Plus, I am really proud of my little sister, and I want to brag about you." Sophie giggled. "Okay, you can tell them. Just do not show them any embarrassing pictures." "No promises," Emma teased. That evening, the family gathered for dinner as usual. Sophie had come to love these daily rituals. Setting the table, everyone sharing about their day, Buster begging for scraps under the table. It was normal and wonderful and everything she had dreamed of during those dark days in the abandoned house. "I have been thinking," Sophie said between bites of Catherine's lasagna, "about that boy Marcus in Memphis. The one who wrote me the letter. Are there more kids like him? Kids who have been waiting a long time for families?" "Many," Thomas said gently. "The system is overwhelmed. There are not enough foster families, and even fewer families willing to adopt older children or kids with special needs." "Why not?" "People have many reasons. Some want babies. Some are afraid of dealing with trauma or behavioral issues. Some do not think they can afford it. It is complicated." Sophie was quiet for a moment, What if we could change that? What if the foundation could help families who want to adopt but are worried about money? We could give them grants or something. Catherine and Thomas looked at each other, and Sophie could see the wheels turning in their minds. That is actually a brilliant idea, Catherine said slowly. Adoption costs can be prohibitive. If we could offset some of those expenses, it might encourage more families to step forward. Let me talk to the board, Thomas said. We would need to structure it carefully, make sure the money is going to the right families. But Sophie, you might have just identified our next major initiative. Sophie beamed with pride. She was 8 years old, but her voice mattered. Her ideas had value. She was making a real difference. The next day at school, Miss Walsh asked Sophie to stay after class for a moment. Sophie worried she had done something wrong, but Miss Walsh was smiling. Sophie, I wanted to tell you something. Remember Marcus, the boy from Memphis who wrote you that letter? I took the liberty of contacting a colleague who teaches at his school. She connected his social worker with our foundation. They are working on finding him a permanent placement. Your foundation is helping make that happen. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? Marcus might get a family. It is looking promising. A couple in Memphis saw his profile through our network, and they are interested in meeting him. None of this would have happened without you, Sophie. Your willingness to share your story is changing lives. Sophie could barely concentrate on her schoolwork for the rest of the day. The idea that Marcus might find a family because of her story filled her with overwhelming joy. That weekend, the foundation held its first official fundraising event, a spring art show featuring work by foster children from across Tennessee. Sophie's painting From Night to Day was the centerpiece, but it was surrounded by dozens of other pieces created by kids in the system. The event was held at Cooper's Corner Books, which Robert and Laura had graciously offered as a venue. They had transformed the store into a gallery, with paintings and drawings hung on every available wall. Each piece was labeled with the artist's first name and age, protecting their privacy while celebrating their talent. The turnout was incredible. Over 200 people attended, including city council members, local business owners, and families interested in fostering or adopting. Several pieces sold, with all proceeds going to the foundation. More importantly, conversations happened. Potential foster parents talked to current foster parents. Social workers connected with interested families. Seeds were planted. Sophie spent the evening walking through the gallery with Bethany, looking at the other children's artwork. Some pieces were joyful, full of bright colors and happy scenes. Others were dark and painful, depicting loneliness and fear. Sophie understood both. Your painting is the best one, Bethany whispered loyally. They are all good, Sophie said. Every single one tells a story. Every kid who made these deserves to be heard. A photographer from the Tennessean newspaper captured Sophie standing in front of From Night to Day, her hand resting gently on the frame. The photo would run on the front page of the Sunday edition with the headline, Second Chances, Foster Child Turned Advocate Creates Foundation to Help Others. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Helen Grant from the bakery approached Sophie with a warm smile. You know what you are doing, do you not? Helen asked. What do you mean? You are giving people hope. You are showing them that terrible things can have beautiful endings. That is a rare gift, Sophie. Do not ever forget how powerful your story is. Sophie thought about that as Thomas drove the family home that night. Her story was powerful, not because she was special, but because it reminded people that kindness mattered. That one person reaching out could change everything. That second chances were possible. As she got ready for bed, Sophie looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She saw a girl with bright eyes and healthy color in her cheeks. A girl who smiled easily and laughed often. A girl who was loved. She barely remembered the frightened, starving child from the abandoned house. That girl felt like someone from a story, not someone she had actually been. But I was her, Sophie whispered to her reflection. And now I am me. And I am okay. She climbed into bed, and Buster immediately jumped up to curl beside her despite the rule about dogs staying on the floor. Sophie did not chase him down. She wrapped her arms around him and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, Miss Carlson was bringing news about Marcus. Tomorrow, the foundation would announce its new Adoption Assistance Grant program. Tomorrow, more letters would arrive from children across Tennessee who needed hope. But tonight, Sophie just needed to sleep, safe and warm in a home where she was loved. Rachel was in prison. The past was behind her. The future stretched ahead, bright and full of possibility. Sophie had faced her demons and won. Now she could truly move forward. 1 year after Thomas Crawford found Sophie Bennett in an abandoned house on Brookside Avenue, the Michael Bennett Second Chances Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as one man's desire to honor his friend's memory had blossomed into a statewide organization that had helped over 300 foster children and facilitated 42 successful adoptions. Sophie was now 9 years old, thriving in 4th grade, and deeply involved in the foundation's work. She spoke at events, met with potential foster families, and continued to use her art to raise awareness and funds. But more than anything, she wanted to do something that felt personal again. It was a rainy Saturday in November, exactly 1 year since her rescue, when Sophie brought up the idea at breakfast. "Mom, Dad, I have been thinking. We have this big house with extra rooms. Emma is away at college most of the year. What if we became foster parents to other kids? Not just me, but more kids who need a home." Thomas set down his coffee cup carefully. Catherine's eyes widened. They looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that married couples have. "You want us to foster more children?" Catherine asked gently. "That is a big responsibility, sweetheart. It would mean sharing your home and your parents with other kids." "I know. But I remember what it felt like to be alone. And now I have all this love and this safe place. It seems wrong not to share it. We could help kids like Miss Carlson helped place me. We could give them second chances too." Thomas reached across the table and took Sophie's hand. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I know. Your father would be so proud of the person you are becoming. So we can do it." Sophie's eyes lit up with hope. "Let us talk about it seriously," Catherine said. "This would be a big change for all of us. We would need to make sure we have the time, energy, and resources to do it right. But I am not saying no. I am saying let us think it through carefully." Over the next few weeks, the Crawford family had many conversations about foster care. They talked to Miss Carlson about the process, attended information sessions, and discussed how it would change their daily lives. Sophie was adamant that she wanted to do this, and her commitment never wavered. "I am not trying to replace Emma or get new siblings," Sophie explained to her older sister during a video call. "I just want to help kids who are in the same situation I was in." "Is that weird?" "It is not weird at all," Emma said warmly. "It is compassionate and mature. But Sophie, you need to understand that foster care can be hard. Some kids will have behavioral problems because of trauma. Some will only stay for a short time and then leave. Are you ready for that?" "I think so. Miss Green and I have talked about it in therapy. She thinks I am ready. And I will have Mom and Dad to help me." "Then I support you completely. You are going to be the best big sister." By December, the Crawfords had completed all the necessary training and home studies to become certified foster parents. Miss Carlson worked personally on their case, fast-tracking them through the system because she knew they would provide exceptional care. The call came on a cold Wednesday evening in January. 2 children, siblings, needed emergency placement. Their mother had been arrested, and there was no family available to take them. A boy named Lucas, age 6, and his sister Mia, age 4. Could the Crawfords take them tonight? "Yes," Catherine said without hesitation. "Bring them here." Sophie helped prepare the 2 spare bedrooms, pulling out fresh sheets and blankets. She placed some of her favorite stuffed animals on each bed, wanting the children to feel welcomed. Thomas went to the store to buy child-friendly groceries and some basic clothes and toiletries. When Miss Carlson arrived with Lucas and Mia, Sophie's heart broke. They looked so small and scared, clutching garbage bags that held all their possessions. Lucas stared at the floor, his jaw set in stubborn silence. Mia clung to her brother's hand, her eyes red from crying. "Hi," Sophie said gently, kneeling down to their level. "I am Sophie. This is my dog Buster. He loves kids. Do you want to pet him?" Mia peeked at Buster from behind Lucas. The golden retriever, sensing the children's fear, sat perfectly still and wagged his tail slowly. After a moment, Mia reached out a tentative hand and touched his fur. Buster licked her fingers, and she giggled despite her tears. "He likes you," Sophie said. Come on, I will show you your rooms. Over the next few days, Lucas and Mia slowly began to settle in. It was not easy. Lucas was angry about being taken from his mother, even though the situation had been dangerous. He refused to talk, refused to participate in family activities, and glared at everyone with hostile eyes. Mia had nightmares every night, waking up screaming for her mama. Sophie watched her parents handle it all with infinite patience. Catherine comforted Mia through the nightmares, singing soft lullabies until she fell back asleep. Thomas sat with Lucas even when the boy ignored him, just being present and steady. They never raised their voices, never showed frustration, never gave up. It is not their fault, Catherine explained to Sophie one evening. They have been through trauma. They need time to trust us. We just have to keep showing them we are safe. Sophie tried to help in her own way. She drew pictures for Mia, taught her how to play with building blocks, and read her stories before bed. With Lucas, she was more careful, respecting his need for space but always including him in invitations. You can paint with me if you want, Sophie offered one afternoon, setting up her easel in the living room. You do not have to talk. You can just paint. Lucas ignored her for a long time, but eventually, curiosity won. He picked up a brush and began to paint aggressive strokes of dark colors. Sophie said nothing, just painted alongside him. When he finished, she looked at his painting seriously. That looks like it has a lot of big feelings in it, she said. That is what art is good for, getting big feelings out. Lucas looked at her for the first time. You were in foster care too? Yeah. I was really scared at first. But this family is good. They really care. It is okay to be mad and scared, but you are safe here. It was the first real conversation Lucas had with anyone since arriving. It was not much, but it was a start. Slowly, over weeks and then months, Lucas and Mia began to heal. Lucas started talking more, even joking around with Thomas. Mia's nightmares became less frequent, and she started calling Catherine Miss Kathy with affection. They were not ready to call them Mom and Dad, and that was okay. What mattered was that they felt secure. Sophie discovered that being a foster sister was both harder and more rewarding than she expected. She had to share her parents' attention, share the bathroom, and deal with Mia sometimes playing with her art supplies without asking. But she also got to witness small miracles, Lucas smiling for the first time, Mia drawing a picture of the family with everyone holding hands, both kids laughing during game night. In March, Miss Carlson told them that Lucas and Mia's mother had successfully completed a rehabilitation program and was working toward reunification with her children. This was good news, but it also meant the kids would eventually leave. How do you feel about that? Miss Green asked Sophie during therapy. Sad, because I will miss them. But also happy, because they get to go home to their mom. That is what they want. They love her. It is possible to feel both things at once, Miss Green said. Sadness and happiness can exist together. That is the hard part of foster care. You love the children, but you have to let them go when it is time. Sophie understood. She had learned that loving someone sometimes meant wanting what was best for them, even if it was not what you wanted. Lucas and Mia returned to their mother in early April, after she had secured stable housing and employment. The goodbye was tearful. Mia clung to Sophie, not wanting to leave. Lucas hugged Thomas hard, whispering thank you in his ear. You can visit anytime, Catherine promised their mother. And if you ever need help, you call us. After they left, the house felt too quiet. Sophie moped around for days, missing the chaos and noise that two younger children brought. But she also felt proud. She had helped them. She had been the big sister they needed during a difficult time. Are we going to foster more kids? Sophie asked at dinner one evening. Do you want to? Thomas asked. Yes. It is hard when they leave, but it is worth it. They needed us. Other kids need us too. Catherine smiled, her eyes shining. Then we will keep doing this. And they did. Over the next year, the Crawfords fostered 3 more children in various short-term placements. Each child was different, with different needs and different stories. Sophie learned how to be flexible, patient, and compassionate. She learned that love was not finite, that you could keep giving it without running out. The foundation continued to grow as well. The Adoption Assistance Grant Program had helped 32 families complete adoptions that would have otherwise been financially impossible. The art program had expanded to include music lessons and sports equipment. They had partnered with schools across Tennessee to identify and support foster children. Marcus, the teenager from Memphis who had written to Sophie, had been successfully adopted by a wonderful couple. He sent Sophie occasional updates, always signing them "your friend who got a second chance." His letters always made Sophie cry happy tears. One evening in October, as Sophie was finishing her homework, Catherine knocked on her door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." Catherine sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, her expression thoughtful. "You know how you always ask if we can keep fostering kids?" "Yeah." "Well, Miss Carlson called today. There is a 10-year-old girl named Ashley. She has been in 7 different foster homes in the past 2 years. She has some behavioral issues stemming from severe trauma. Most families cannot handle her. Miss Carlson thinks we might be able to help, but she wanted to be honest about how challenging it could be. What do you think?" Sophie did not hesitate. "I think we should help her. If nobody else will, we should. It might be really hard, sweetheart. She might be angry and difficult. I was scared and difficult when you first took me in. You did not give up on me. We should not give up on her either." Catherine pulled Sophie into a hug. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," Sophie said, hugging her back. Ashley arrived the following week, and she was indeed challenging. She cursed, broke things, ran away twice, and tested every boundary the Crawfords set. But they did not give up. They held firm on rules while showing unconditional love. Sophie befriended her slowly, not pushing, just being present. One night, 3 months after Ashley arrived, Sophie found her crying in the bathroom. "What is wrong?" Sophie asked gently. "Why do you all keep being nice to me? I am awful. I break things and I am mean and I mess everything up. Why have you not sent me away yet?" Sophie sat down on the floor beside her. "Because you are not awful. You are hurt. There is a difference. And we do not give up on people we care about. You are part of this family now, for as long as you need to be." "What if I need to be here forever?" Ashley whispered. "Then you will be here forever," Sophie said simply. "If that is what you want and what is best for you." Ashley stared at her, tears streaming down her face. "I have never had forever before." "Well, now you do." That conversation marked a turning point. Ashley slowly began to trust, to open up, to believe that this placement might actually last. She was still difficult sometimes, still had bad days, but the good days started to outnumber the bad. By the time November rolled around again, marking 2 years since Sophie's rescue, Ashley was calling Thomas and Catherine mom and dad. The adoption paperwork was in progress. She would officially become Ashley Crawford in the spring. Sophie sat in her art studio one afternoon, working on a new painting for the Foundation's annual fundraiser. This one showed a chain of people holding hands, stretching from darkness into light. She called it "We Are Connected." Emma was home from medical school for the holiday, and she came to watch Sophie paint. "You know what is amazing?" Emma said. 2 years ago, you were the one being rescued. Now you are the one doing the rescuing." "I am not rescuing anyone," Sophie protested. "Mom and Dad do the hard work. You inspire the work. You showed them what was possible. And you have become the best big sister to every kid who walks through that door. That is pretty heroic, if you ask me." Sophie smiled, adding a bright yellow sun to the corner of her painting. "I am just paying it forward. Someone helped me, so now I help others. That is how it should work." "That is exactly how it should work," Emma agreed. "And you know what the best part is? All those kids you are helping now, they are going to grow up and help other people. It is a ripple effect that will keep going long after we are all gone. That is legacy, Sophie. That is real change." Sophie thought about that. She thought about Marcus in Memphis, Lucas and Mia back with their mother, Ashley finally finding a permanent home. She thought about the hundreds of children the Foundation had helped. She thought about all the foster families who had been inspired to open their homes. One girl, abandoned in an empty house, had somehow started all of this. No, Sophie corrected herself. One girl had been saved by a kind man who chose to help instead of walking away. And that kindness had rippled outward, creating waves of change. "I want to keep doing this forever," Sophie said. "When I grow up, I want to work with foster kids. Maybe be a social worker like Miss Carlson or an art therapist like Miss Green. I want to spend my whole life helping kids who need second chances." "You will be amazing at it," Emma said with certainty. "You already are." That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Thomas, Catherine, Emma, Sophie, Ashley, and Buster under the table hoping for drop food. They held hands while Thomas said grace, thanking God for second chances, for family, and for the opportunity to save others. Sophie squeezed Ashley's hand, and Ashley squeezed back. 2 years ago, Sophie had thought her life was over. Now it was just beginning, and she was going to spend it making sure other children got the same second chance she had been given. Because that was what love did. It multiplied. It grew. It spread. And it changed everything. The morning of November 8th dawned clear and bright, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to promise good things. Sophie woke up early, too excited to sleep. Today was special. Today was the day they would unveil the community center that had been built in the very house where Thomas had found her 2 years ago. The abandoned house on Brookside Avenue had been transformed. Thomas had overseen the renovation personally, turning the empty shell of Sophie's nightmare into a bright, welcoming space for at-risk children throughout Nashville. The building now housed after-school programs, art studios, counseling offices, and a library. It was called the Bennett Center for Second Chances. Sophie got dressed carefully in a bright green dress that Catherine had bought for the occasion. She put on her locket, touching the pictures inside for luck. Then she went downstairs to find her family already gathering in the kitchen. Thomas was making pancakes, a special occasion tradition. Catherine was packing supplies for the day's celebration. Emma was home from Boston, looking professional in a Navy suit, because she was giving a speech about the Foundation's impact on public health outcomes. Ashley, now officially Ashley Crawford after her adoption had been finalized in the spring, was setting the table and singing to herself, something she did often now that she felt safe and happy. "There's our star," Thomas said when he saw Sophie. "Ready for your big day?" "I think so. I am a little nervous about seeing the house again." "That is understandable," Catherine said, coming over to hug her. "But remember, it is not the same place anymore. You took something that represented your darkest moment and turned it into something that will help thousands of children. That is powerful." The family ate breakfast together, chatting about the day ahead. Over 200 people were expected to attend the grand opening, including city officials, donors, community members, and several families from the Foundation's foster care network. The mayor herself was going to speak, as well as Miss Carlson, Pastor Monroe, and Sophie. Yes, Sophie. At 10 years old, she was going to give a speech in front of hundreds of people. The thought terrified her, but she knew it was important. Her story mattered. Her words could inspire others. They arrived at the Bennett Center an hour before the ceremony to do final preparations. Sophie had not been to the property since Thomas started renovations, wanting to see the finished product all at once. When she stepped out of the car and looked at the building, tears immediately sprang to her eyes. It was beautiful. The old brick had been cleaned and restored. New windows gleamed in the sunlight. The overgrown yard had been transformed into a playground and garden. A wooden sign hung above the door, "Bennett Center for Second Chances, where hope begins." "Do you want to go inside?" Thomas asked gently, offering his hand. Sophie took it, and together they walked through the front door. The interior was stunning. The walls were painted in cheerful colors, soft yellows, pale blues, warm greens. Natural light poured through the large windows. The space that had once been empty and terrifying was now filled with art supplies, books, comfortable furniture, and signs of life. They walked through each room. The art studio where Sophie had painted from night to day was now a bright space with easels, supplies, and children's artwork displayed on the walls. The bedroom where she had shivered in fear was now a cozy library with beanbag chairs and shelves full of books. The kitchen where she had desperately searched for food was now a teaching kitchen where kids could learn to cook healthy meals. In the main gathering room, workers were setting up chairs for the ceremony. A stage had been built at one end, with a draped canvas hanging behind it. That was Sophie's surprise contribution, a massive mural she had painted over the past 3 months, working in secret in Thomas's workshop. "Can I see it now?" Ashley begged. She had been sworn to secrecy about the mural's content. "Not yet," Sophie said with a smile. "Everyone will see it together during the ceremony." People began arriving around 10 in the morning. Sophie greeted guests alongside Thomas and Catherine, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. She saw familiar faces everywhere: Miss Carlson, Miss Walsh, Miss Green, Detective Moore, Helen Grant, the Cooper family, Pastor Monroe, and dozens of others who had been part of her journey. Marcus came from Memphis with his adoptive parents. He had grown several inches in the past year and looked healthy and happy. He gave Sophie a huge hug. "This is incredible," he said, looking around. "You did this. You actually made this happen." "A lot of people made this happen," Sophie corrected. "I just helped." "Do not sell yourself short," his adoptive father said. "Your story inspired my wife and me to become foster parents. We adopted Marcus, and we just started fostering a sibling group of 3. You started something important, Sophie." Stories like that kept coming all morning. Person after person approached Sophie to tell her how the foundation had impacted their lives. Foster parents who had been encouraged to open their homes. Adopted children who had received scholarships and support. Social workers who had better resources because of foundation funding. Community members who had been inspired to volunteer. The ceremony began at noon. The mayor spoke first, praising the foundation's work and declaring November 8th as Second Chances Day in Nashville. Miss Carlson spoke about the transformation she had witnessed in Sophie and in the foster care system thanks to the foundation's efforts. Pastor Monroe talked about the power of redemption and community. Then it was Emma's turn. She gave a compelling speech about how Sophie's rescue and the subsequent foundation had measurably improved outcomes for foster children in Tennessee. She cited statistics about increased adoption rates, improved mental health services, and better educational support. She was brilliant and professional, and Sophie felt overwhelming pride in her big sister. Finally, it was Sophie's turn. Catherine squeezed her hand encouragingly as Sophie walked to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd and saw so many faces she loved, so many people who had helped her along the way. 2 years ago, Sophie began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I was in this building, scared and alone. I thought I was going to die here. I thought nobody cared about me. I thought my life was over." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. "But then Mr. Thomas found me. He broke down the door, and he saved my life. He and Miss Catherine took me home. They gave me food and clothes and a bed. But more than that, they gave me love. They gave me a family. They gave me hope." Sophie paused, collecting her thoughts. "I learned something important over the past 2 years. I learned that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. One person choosing to care can change everything. Mr. Thomas chose to care about me, and that choice created a ripple effect. He and Miss Catherine became my parents. We started a foundation. That foundation helped hundreds of kids. Those kids are now helping other people. It keeps spreading and spreading, all because one person chose kindness." She looked directly at Thomas, who was standing at the side of the stage with tears running down his face. "My dad, my birth father Michael Bennett, used to tell me to be brave and kind. He said those 2 things could get you through anything. He was right. This building is named after him because he was one of the kindest people who ever lived, and because his kindness lives on through all of us." Sophie took a deep breath for the final part of her speech. If you are here today and you are thinking about becoming a foster parent, please do it. There are kids out there right now who are scared and alone like I was. They need you. If you are here and you want to donate to the foundation, thank you. Your money helps kids get the support they need. And if you are here and you are a foster kid yourself, I want you to know something. She looked out at the audience, finding the handful of foster children scattered throughout the crowd. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not a burden. You are valuable and loved and deserving of every good thing. Your story is not over. This is just a hard chapter, but better chapters are coming. Hold on. Be brave. Accept help when it is offered. Second chances are real. I am proof of that. The crowd erupted in applause. Sophie stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed by emotion. Catherine hurried onto the stage and hugged her tight. When the applause finally died down, Thomas joined them on stage. He gestured to the draped canvas behind them. Sophie has created something special for this space. A mural that will hang here permanently, reminding everyone who enters this building what we stand for. Sophie, would you like to unveil it? Sophie nodded and walked to the canvas. She grabbed the edge of the drape, took a deep breath, and pulled. The mural was revealed, and gasps rippled through the crowd. It was massive, at least 12 feet wide and 8 feet tall. The painting showed a diverse group of children and adults holding hands in a circle. In the background, a sunrise broke through dark clouds, casting light on everyone below. Each person in the circle was different ages, different races, different expressions. But they were all connected, all part of the same community. In the center of the circle, in beautiful lettering, were the words, "We rise together." The audience applauded again, many people wiping tears from their eyes. The mural was powerful and hopeful and everything the Bennett Center represented. After the ceremony, people toured the building, exploring each room and learning about the programs that would be offered. Sophie walked through with Ashley, explaining what each space would be used for. "This is where kids can come after school if they need a safe place," Sophie said, pointing to a cozy reading nook. "And this is where they can get help with homework. And this is where they can do art therapy if they are sad or angry." "I wish I had a place like this when I was little," Ashley said quietly, "before I came to live with you guys. That is why we built it, so other kids can have what we did not have." They ended their tour in the art studio, where several children were already experimenting with the supplies. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, was painting with intense concentration. She looked up when Sophie approached. "Hi. You Sophie?" "I am. What is your name?" "Lily. I am in foster care. My foster mom brought me here today. She said you were in foster care too." "I was. For a little while." "Were you scared?" "Very scared. But then I found my family, and everything got better." "Are you scared?" Lily nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "My foster mom is nice, but I miss my old house and my dog and my toys. Everything is different." Sophie knelt down beside her. "Different can feel scary, but different can also be good. Give it time. Keep being brave. And if you need someone to talk to, the counselors here can help. Or you can come here and paint how you feel. That always helped me. Really. Painting helped me more than almost anything else." Lily smiled, a small fragile thing. "Okay, I will try that." As the afternoon progressed, Sophie found herself talking to child after child, sharing her story, offering encouragement, and providing hope. Each conversation reminded her why this center mattered so much. These kids needed to know they were not alone. They needed to see living proof that things could get better. As the sun began to set, and the crowd started to thin, Sophie found herself standing in front of the building with her family. Thomas and Catherine stood on either side of her, with Emma and Ashley completing their circle. Buster sat at their feet, panting happily after a day of receiving attention from dozens of children. "You did it," Catherine said softly. "You took your pain and turned it into purpose. I am so proud of you." "We all did it," Sophie insisted. "I could not have done any of this without all of you." "That is what family does," Thomas said. "We lift each other up. We help each other become better. You helped us become better people, Sophie. You showed us what really matters." Detective Moore approach. Retry. OS. Continue. D them one last time before leaving. She had been watching from the sidelines most of the day, letting others have the spotlight. "I have worked a lot of cases in my career," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But finding you that day, Sophie, and seeing what came from it, this is the one I will remember forever. You turned the worst case of child abandonment I ever investigated into something beautiful. Thank you for that." "Thank you for finding Rachel," Sophie said, "for making sure she could never hurt anyone else. Just doing my job. But this," she gestured at the building, "this is beyond any job. This is love in action." As evening fell and the last visitors left, the Crawford family stood together in the gathering room of the Bennett Center. The lights were dimmed, and Sophie's mural glowed softly in the ambient light. "Can we come back here often?" Ashley asked. "I want to volunteer. I want to help other kids like Sophie helped me." "Of course," Catherine said. "This center belongs to all of us. We will all be part of making it work." "I can help with art classes," Sophie offered. "And maybe music too. I have been learning guitar, like my dad used to play." "I can tutor kids in science when I am home from medical school," Emma added. "And I can help connect families with medical resources." "This is going to be amazing," Thomas said, looking around with satisfaction. "Your father would be so proud, Sophie. Not just of this building, but of the person you have become. You took everything he taught you about being brave and kind, and you multiplied it. You created a legacy." Sophie walked over to the mural and placed her hand against it, feeling the texture of the dried paint beneath her fingers. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the loss of her father, Rachel's cruelty, the abandoned house, Thomas breaking down the door, Catherine's warm welcome, therapy and healing, school and friends, art and expression, foster siblings who needed love, a foundation that helped hundreds. Every single piece had been necessary, even the painful parts. They had shaped her into someone who could help others, someone who understood suffering and could offer real hope because she had lived through it herself. "I used to wonder why bad things happened to me," Sophie said quietly. "Why my dad had to die. Why Rachel was so mean. Why I had to be so scared and alone. But I think maybe those things happened so I could be here now. So I could help other kids. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense," Thomas said, coming to stand beside her. "We do not always get to choose what happens to us, but we always get to choose what we do with it. You chose to turn your pain into purpose. That is the bravest thing anyone can do." They stood there together for a long moment, a family that had been built not by blood but by choice and love and second chances. Then Catherine clapped her hands together. "Okay, family. It has been a long, wonderful day. What do you say we go home, order pizza, and watch a movie? We can celebrate more tomorrow, but tonight, I think we all need to just be together." "Can we watch something funny?" Ashley asked. "I am tired of crying. I have cried happy tears like 10 times today." "Me too," Sophie laughed. "Something funny sounds perfect." They locked up the Bennett Center, turning off the lights one by one. As they walked to the car, Sophie turned back for one last look at the building. Tomorrow, it would open its doors to children who needed help. Next week, after-school programs would begin. Next month, art therapy sessions would start. Year after year, this place would serve as a beacon of hope for kids who felt hopeless. And it all started because one man chose to investigate an empty house he had just purchased. One man chose to break down a door instead of walking away. One man chose to care. The drive home was filled with chatter and laughter. Ashley and Emma debated which movie to watch. Catherine called in the pizza order. Thomas drove carefully through the Nashville evening traffic, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at Sophie with a smile. When they got home, Buster greeted them with his usual enthusiasm, as if they had been gone for weeks instead of hours. They changed into comfortable clothes, gathered in the living room with pizza boxes and sodas, and settled in for a movie. Halfway through the comedy they had chosen, Sophie looked around at her family. Ashley was laughing so hard at a joke that pizza nearly came out of her nose. Emma was throwing popcorn at Thomas, who was making terrible puns. Catherine was smiling, looking content and happy and exactly like a mom should look. This was home. This was family. This was love. And Sophie had almost missed all of it. She had almost died in that abandoned house, alone and afraid. But she had survived. And more than that, she had thrived. The movie ended and Ashley fell asleep on the couch, her head on Sophie's shoulder. Catherine carried her upstairs to bed while Emma helped clean up the pizza boxes. Thomas stood at the window, looking out at the night sky. "What are you thinking about?" Sophie asked, coming to stand beside him. "About your father. About how proud he would be. About how one life can touch so many others. About how grateful I am that I bought that house on Brookside Avenue 2 years ago." "Do you think it was fate?" That you were supposed to find me. Thomas considered the question seriously. I do not know about fate. But I know that I am grateful every single day that I did find you. You changed my life, Sophie. You reminded me what really matters. You made me a better person. You saved my life, Sophie said simply. I would be dead without you. And my life would be empty without you. So I guess we saved each other. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, children were scared and alone, waiting for their own second chances. But because of the Bennett Center, because of the foundation, because of the ripple effect of kindness that had started 2 years ago, some of those children would find hope. Dad. Sophie said softly. She had started calling Thomas Dad about 6 months ago, and it still made his eyes misty every time. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For loving me. For helping me become who I am. Thomas pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. Thank you for letting us love you. Thank you for being brave enough to trust us. Thank you for being you. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Come on, you two. It is late and tomorrow is a school day. Sophie needs sleep, even if she did have the most amazing day ever. Sophie went upstairs, brushed her teeth, and changed into her pajamas. She climbed into bed and Catherine came in to say goodnight, sitting on the edge of the mattress like she did every evening. I am so proud of you, Catherine said, brushing Sophie's hair back from her forehead. The speech you gave today was powerful. The mural you created is stunning. But more than that, the person you are becoming is extraordinary. You have taken every hard thing life threw at you and chosen to respond with kindness and grace. That is rare and beautiful. I learned from you, Sophie said. You and Dad showed me what kindness looks like. You showed me what love looks like. I am just copying what you do. Then we have done our job as parents, Catherine said with a smile. Sleep well, my darling girl. Tomorrow is another adventure. After Catherine left, Sophie lay in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling around her. She heard Thomas loading the dishwasher downstairs. She heard Emma talking on the phone to her boyfriend in Boston. She heard Ashley's soft snores from the next room. She heard Buster's paws clicking across the hardwood floor as he made his rounds. These were the sounds of home, the sounds of safety, the sounds of love. Sophie reached for her locket, opening it to look at the 2 pictures inside even though it was too dark to see them clearly. Her father on one side, her new family on the other, past and future, connected by love. I did it, Daddy, she whispered into the darkness. I survived. And I am going to help other kids survive too. I hope you are proud. I hope you are watching. I love you. She closed the locket and placed her hand over her heart, feeling it beat steady and strong. She was alive. She was loved. She was home. And tomorrow, the Bennett Center would open its doors and begin changing lives, one child at a time. The work would never be finished. There would always be more kids who needed help, more families who needed support, more second chances to offer. But that was okay. Sophie was ready for it. She had her family beside her, her community behind her, and her father's memory guiding her forward. She closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of sunrises and second chances, of children finding homes and families finding each other, of kindness rippling outward like waves across a vast ocean, touching shores she would never see but impacting lives she would never know. Because that was what love did. It spread. It grew. It multiplied. And it changed everything.